This is the Thursday, June 20, 2024, regular Village Board meeting. I'll call the meeting to order, and Village Manager Crowley, if you could do a roll call, please.
Trustee Hallwax.
Here.
Trustee Listener.
Here.
Trustee Mielopoulos.
Here.
Trustee Underdunk.
Here.
Trustee Rubin.
Here.
Trustee Scott.
Here.
President Rowan.
Here, Trustee Hallwax is traveling for work, which allows him to participate remotely in compliance with the Village's remote participation process. If any member of the board has concerns with him participating in this way, please let me know. Otherwise, we'll continue. There weren't any gripes, so we're going to continue with Trustee Hallwax on the phone. We're live streaming this meeting, and we'll also make the recording available on the Village's YouTube channel following the conclusion of tonight's meeting. Next item on the agenda is consideration of minutes. The minutes have been circulated. We circulated minutes for the Board of Trustees special meeting on April 20, 2024, the Committee of the Whole meeting on May 16th, 2024, and the Board of Trustees regular meeting on May 16th, 2024. The minutes have been circulated to the board. They've been published online. Are there any? Oh, there are more minutes. Yeah. Sorry. We also have the Strategic Vision Working Group on June 3rd. That was our strategic planning meeting. The Board of Trustees closed session on January 18th, 2024. And the Board of Trustees closed session on April 18th, 2024. The closed session meeting minutes were not circulated online, but they were circulated to the board. If there aren't any comments or corrections, is there a motion to approve these minutes?
So moved.
Is there a second? It's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
The minutes are approved. The next item on the agenda is public comment. This is where we allow members of the public to address the village board on a topic that's within our purview and jurisdiction, but is not listed in another location on the agenda. If you want to speak about a matter that is listed as on the agenda, then we'll ask you to wait until we get to that item, and then we'll give you an opportunity to speak. If your matter is on the consent agenda, please let us know if you want us to remove that matter so that you can speak about it. Anyone wanting to speak should fill out a written speaker form, which is located at the back of the boardroom, and submit it to the village manager. He's here. This time is intended as an opportunity for you to make comments to the village board. We'll listen to everything you have to say, but this will not ordinarily be a time for our discussion or engagement. If appropriate, we may direct the village manager or the village staff to respond to questions or issues raised at a later date. All speakers will be limited to 3 minutes. To be fair to everyone, we're going to strictly enforce this rule. We request that all speakers be respectful, civil, and non-repetitive, and we ask that all members of the audience refrain from applauding or making any other comments during or after any speaker. Is there anyone that wants to speak about a non-agenda item? All right, I don't see anyone. Okay, which gets us to the next item on the agenda, reports of committees. The first committee report is Committee of the Whole. We just had that meeting a few minutes ago. And at that meeting, we covered 2 subjects. One, we got a report from the village staff on the progress of our golf clubhouse budget and construction timeline. The other discussion we had was concerning uptown parking and streetscape. That's the report on the Committee of the Whole that we just had. The next report is the Finance Committee, and I'll ask the Chair of our Finance Committee, Trustee Rubin, to speak on that.
Thank you. We had our Finance Committee meeting this past Tuesday, the 18th, and at the meeting we discussed the monthly financial reports, as we typically do, among other things. As of the end of May, the general fund revenue performance for a number of the village's revenue sources exceeded both the monthly budget targets and prior year's receipts, including the places for eating tax, building permits, garbage and parking fees, and vehicle licenses. We discussed that sales taxes, however, are trending down, and we believe that this particular revenue source is likely plateaued. staff has outlined several one-time purchases that were made last year that have skewed our year-over-year comparisons, however. So it's interesting. We can get some detail on what was being sold and included in our tax base. But clearly this doesn't seem to be going up, and we have to understand that it's plateaued. Expenditures are within budgetary targets, and we are, of course, seeing an increase in personnel expenditures, but that's as planned as we continue to fill our vacant positions, especially in the Public Safety Department. And in addition, we discussed moving a portion of the village's reserves, cash reserves, into longer terms that would be like 2 to 5 year term investment portfolio to take advantage of current high interest rate environment for government securities, but still maintain, very importantly, maintain our compliance with our investment policies. We also discussed the village's annual audit, which is on tonight's agenda for acceptance. It reflects a positive financial outcome for the village in 2023. We also discussed the village's actuarial reports that were presented for the police and fire pension funds. And the bad news there, not unexpectedly, is that there's a 16% increase in contributions that we are likely to decide to make for 2025 over 2024 for the pension fund for the police, which amounts to $450,000 more. But again, a large portion of that is good news in that it reflects the fact that we have more police and safety personnel working for us. That's the big factor there. Lastly, the committee also discussed several capital items that are also on tonight's agenda and changes to timelines for several other capital items, including some bridge maintenance and sanitary sewer rehabilitation. And that is our report.
Thanks for that report. The next report is the Plan Commission, and Trustee Listner is the Village Board representative on the Plan Commission.
Yes, thank you very much. The Plan Commission did not meet in May, but over the past month, members of the planning team have presented the draft comprehensive plan to different boards and commissions throughout the village, including the Park District, the School Board, the Library Board, the Golf Advisory Committee, and the Sustainability Task Force. The planning team and the commission will incorporate this feedback that they're receiving from these discussions into the draft plan in preparation for our upcoming July 9th open house at Ryder's Theater. So this public open house is being held on Tuesday, July 9th from 5 to 7 p.m. and it will be an opportunity for the public to review and comment on the draft plan prior to a formal public hearing and review by the Plan Commission and the Village Board. We will be meeting next week on June 26th and reviewing a plat of subdivision for 309 to 325 Washington Avenue. At that property, the applicants own 4 houses on the north side of Washington Avenue, west of Green Bay Road, and they have proposed reconfiguring it into 2 lots. They plan to build a house for themselves on one lot, and then the lot closer to Green Bay Road, which is zoned for RD. They're proposing to potentially sell it for redevelopment after the completion of their own home. And this could potentially be a multifamily site if they do get an SUP on that. So we will see once the approval is reached from the Plan Commission. And then finally, the Commission will be making a recommendation on the subdivision, which will then be reviewed by the Village Board at a later meeting. Thank you very much.
Thanks for that report. The next report is the Golf Advisory Committee. Since Trustee Hallwax is on the phone, I'm going to have our golf club manager, Stella Nanos, report on the Golf Advisory Committee. Stella.
Thank you. The Golf Advisory Board Committee, we reported did have a presentation by Lee Brown on comprehensive plan to members of the Golf Advisory Committee, and there was some good feedback there. And that's it.
Thanks for that report. The next report is Sustainability Task Force, and Trustee Mihalopoulos is our representative on that. Georgia, take it away.
Good evening, everyone. At the May 28 STF meeting, we met with Tesca and Associates and a member of the Plan Commission to review the draft comprehensive plan. There was a lot of discussion about encouraging variable types of sustainable land uses, ways to integrate natural landscaping, alternative healing and cooling solutions in building construction, and some emission goals. We also discussed plans for Rainy Day Trail Day, which is scheduled for July 27th. The STF also partnered with the North Shore Exchange to provide reusable cloth bags for its 2024 sidewalk sale. The North Shore Exchange said that they typically use over 3,000 single-use bags for this event alone. So we're providing the North Shore Exchange with 2,000 reusable cloth bags to help reduce the amount of plastic generated, and to encourage people to think a little more sustainably when they shop. The sidewalk sale is scheduled for June 28th and 29th. And that is all. Thank you.
Thanks for that report. The next report is the Council for Inclusion and Community, and Trustee Scott is our representative on that.
Thank you. The GCIC met on Wednesday, June 12th at 5:30. A significant portion of the meeting was focused on the review of the updated draft of the All-In Glencoe Comprehensive Plan. Bruce Huvard and Lee Brown shared a brief presentation, and the council discussed the plan and committed to continuing to review and share comments after the meeting. Following the presentation on the comprehensive plan, each subcommittee shared the work that they completed over the last month, including a set of social media posts created by the communications subcommittee that will begin to be posted regularly, and planning for upcoming events in June that will need council participation. The council discussed opportunities to gather more community feedback to guide future council activities and initiatives, and the council also discussed shifting their meeting dates to the first Monday of the month, due to Wednesday being a difficult day for many members to attend. The next date for the council will be July 1st, Monday, July 1st. That's all I have.
Thanks very much. The next report is the Preservation Commission, and Trustee Onderdunk is our representative on that, and stay here because he's also our representative on the Tree Commission. First,
Thank you.
Preservation Commission.
The Preservation Commission met on Tuesday, June 4th. The commission met with Tesca Associates on the updated draft of the comprehensive plan and provided several comments providing preservation as it relates to the culture of our community. The relationship between preservation and housing diversity also was examined during the meeting. The commission discussed potential additions to the village list of historic structures in Glencoe based on their architecture, architect, and cultural significance. The commission and some volunteer commissioners will be surveying more recent 50-year plus structures to update our list. This will include some newer mid-century modern homes, which is quite a switch from the past. The historic structure story map, which is on the village webpage, has been updated with more content and accuracy. There were no demolition permits to review, and the next meeting of the commission is July 9th here in Village Hall. Do you want me to continue with this tree commission?
Just so we're regular, that's the report on the Preservation Commission, Tree Commission now.
Tree Commission, okay. The Tree Commission meets bi-monthly, and their next meeting is not until June 26th, so I have no additional information from the Tree Commission. I do want to add that village staff has been diligently working on our urban forest, as it's called. We had a very successful Arbor Day program, and things are moving along pretty well in this area. Thank you.
All right, Thanks for that report. That concludes the reports of committees and commissions. Next item on the agenda is reports of officers, and first, the village manager's report. Village Manager Corrali.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good evening, everyone. We've got a few items on the manager's report tonight, but we're going to get started with a presentation of the annual comprehensive financial report. Representatives from our auditing firm, Lauterbach and Amon, is present here tonight to share the ACFR. This was, as Trustee Rubin noted, also presented this week to the Finance Committee. I've asked Deputy Village Manager, CFO Nikki Larson, to provide a brief introduction and then introduce Don Shaw, and both will be available to answer questions that the board may have. So, Nikki, take it away.
So the audit process, as we presented on Tuesday, was the culmination of months and months of work on the part of our staff. We started the process back in December with a planning meeting and conducted preliminary field work in January, where the auditors came out and reviewed all of the village's internal controls. And then we completed with final field work. That took over 2 weeks between February 26th and March 1st, and March 11th and March 15th. That was a combination of in-person and hybrid work from our audit team and our finance team. I want to recognize Margaret Schwartz and her team. They were instrumental in making this happen this year. Upon acceptance of the audit this evening, this will have a kind of a domino effect for the finance department. There's a myriad of required filings that will happen following the acceptance of the audit. A number of
Yep, this is better. Thank you. A number of required state filings, including the Illinois Comptroller's Report, the Division of Insurance Report, our annual debt disclosure, and our annual Treasurer's Report. So at this point, I'll hand over the presentation to Don Shaw, who is our audit manager on this project.
Welcome.
Hey, thank you for having me. First, I'd like to thank Nikki and especially Margaret for all their help making this another successful audit year. Without them, this is not possible, so appreciate all your efforts. Next, we can go through the annual financial report, which is the thicker of the packets you receive. And if you turn to page 7, you'll find the Certificate of Achievement Award. This award was provided for the 2022 audit year. We have applied for and expect to receive the same award for 2023. So congratulations on receiving this award. If you turn about 3 more pages, you'll run into our Lauterbach and Amon letterhead. This is our independent audit report in which we provide a clean, unmodified opinion. That's the highest opinion you can receive. Basically states that we found no issues with internal controls or the numbers as they are presented. The next section in your report would be the management discussion and analysis, which begins on page 16. And the management discussion analysis really provides a summary of how the year performed in narrative form. So if you have questions on fluctuations from year to year, or what the numbers truly mean, this is where you'd want to go to find those answers. Within there, you'll notice that the general fund had a net increase of about $1 million, primarily related to your revenues coming in higher than anticipated and your expenditures being below budget in the current year. The notes to the financial statements will begin on page 45. And the notes really provide further detail into how we came up with the figures that we did with supporting schedules. Within there, you're going to find your long-term debt and your capital asset schedules. I'm not going to go through the notes with you tonight, so I'll have you skip ahead all the way to page 109. Page 109 is the start of your budgetary information. So if you want to see how a specific fund performed based on what is budgeted, this is where you'd want to go to see those comparisons. Does anyone have any questions? If not,
That's great. Just so it doesn't look like we're uninterested in something that's pretty important. We covered the exact same stuff in our finance committee meeting on Tuesday. So for some of us, nothing's changed in the 2 days. Let me just say, in my prior life, one of the things that I did was I represented accounting firms when they got sued for malpractice. So I learned a little bit about what can go wrong. And I just want you to sort of confirm for all of us that you've looked over our financial statements, our internal controls, and all of it, and it looked okay to you.
Yes, absolutely. As mentioned during preliminary fieldwork is where we focus on internal controls. So we look at the various procedures throughout the year, and we make selections to ensure that the segregation of duties is strong, which obviously we had no issues with that. And then during fieldwork, we test the balances that are highlighted to supporting documents, and we found no errors or no issues with the numbers as well. So it was a really clean audit year, and Margaret made my life easier, so appreciate all the help.
That's great. Anybody have any questions, comments? Let me just say thank you for your work, and thank you to Margaret and Nikki and your team for, continuing to make us look like a responsible operation, which we really want to be. Okay?
All right. Thank you for your time. Enjoy the rest of your evening.
Thanks.
Looking like a responsible operation has the benefit of being true, so that's a good thing. A good thing. Thank you. Thanks Don for coming in tonight, and to the Lauterbach and Amon team for their work, but especially just to double down, Nikki, Margaret. We couldn't do it without you guys. Thank you so much for not just the work that gets done to get us to the end of the ACFR process, but all through the year. Thank you. A couple of updates for you this evening that we're going to run through. First is an update on the South Green Bay Road Stormwater Project. This week, significant work commenced on the village's largest infrastructure project of the year. The South Green Bay Road Stormwater Project did get a 1-week delayed start due to some subcontractor issues, and work through this week has definitely caused some inconvenience and frustration due to some construction impacts as well as the necessary detour routes. And while I think we've worked through those initial issues, I've asked Don Kirk, our Public Works General Superintendent, to just provide the board a brief update on this project, what we're doing, and how it's going.
Fun we're having.
Thanks, Don.
Thanks. Village Manager Corrali, good evening, everyone. The first phase of the project began Monday with the work focused on Green Bay Road between Woodlawn and Jackson. This phase of the work requires a complete shutdown and detour of traffic on Green Bay Road during work hours. The designated detour routes traffic east of Green Bay Road via Harbor, Sheridan, and Scott. Unfortunately, some of the traffic didn't obey the detour and decided to use Linden Avenue as a shortcut. As you can imagine, that was not well received by the residents who live in Linden. So in response, we made an adjustment on Wednesday morning that completely blocked Linden through traffic at Harbor and Green Bay Road. That seemed to remedy the issue. We haven't had any complaints since. With this closure in place, Linden residents are able to access their homes by using Woodlawn or Jackson to the west. The daily full road closure of Green Bay Road will continue until next Wednesday, where they anticipate in completing some significant work between that stretch. At that time, the contractor will transition to one-lane traffic utilizing flaggers. The designated detour that I described, with Sheridan, Scott, and Harbor, that will stay in place through the duration of the project, so that can always be an alternate route for anyone traveling in the area. At this time, that's all I have. Any questions?
So I talked to the village manager about this earlier when we had the little kerfuffle with people going on Linden. We were guessing that it was because people have on their cars, their phones, they get routed to the next best place. So I hope, we don't know if that's true, but it certainly sounds like it could be true. Can we consider, when we have these projects requiring detours, is there a way to talk to the Apple and Google and whomever maps and tell them, hey, we're about to do something?
Yes, and I believe
We
staff
actually
was
did,
working on
yeah,
that.
we actually did convey the detour route to the major mapping providers. There is a way to do that. So that'll now become kind of the primary first step anytime we do have a detour that goes into place, even if it's a short-term one. I do think people have become hyper-reliant upon navigation systems, and navigation systems like water will always find the fastest route to wherever they're going. So that did cause us some issues, but we are able to submit those detour routes.
Another contributing factor is getting traffic into Hubbard Woods. So that's not a full closure right at Scott. So it says, closed it through traffic. They come around and then they're taking Linden. So.
Yeah, we do have signage available that says the businesses are open, so that folks don't feel like they can't get to Hubbard Woods Plaza, but you do have to do a little bit of dancing around signage over there. So this project will be going on through the remainder of the summer into the fall. Large-scale stormwater project, about a $4 million project, as I said, the biggest this year that we're doing. We do recognize that there are impacts to construction. We'll continue, and as we have been doing, to provide updates regularly. We do a weekly construction update that we submit through e-news, as well as upload on the village's website. So we're gonna. It's always the time of the year where we have to remind folks that we do have those updates regularly, and they should keep an eye out for them. But we will continue to do so. Thanks, Don.
Thank you.
Okay, I wanted to provide just a brief update also on a subject that is often spoken of in the community, and that relates to downtown parking. Over the past few weeks, patrons in our downtown businesses have seen some changes come to the central business district specifically related to parking. The best news that we've been busy sharing is that the former Southwest commuter parking lot, which is located on the south side of Park Avenue between Green Bay Road and the tracks, has been opened for 3-hour downtown patron parking. So historically, this lot had been used by Village Hall employees, downtown business employees, and some commuters. There are 32 parking spaces that are now available for shoppers and visitors to the downtown, and we do encourage the use of this lot. The pedestrian crossing signals have been recalibrated to make it easier to cross Green Bay Road, and as we discussed tonight at the Committee of the Whole, we're looking forward to finding ways to make that crossing even easier and to make our lots to the east of the downtown more accessible. Just as another further reminder, all of our commuter parking lots are available to all parkers after 10 a.m. There are no time restrictions on those commuter parking lots. So if you park there after 10 a.m. and you have a long appointment in the downtown, you will not get a parking ticket. We encourage you to park there, encourage you to utilize those spaces, especially for those longer term visits. During the midday hours, we have installed some message boards at the corner of Park Avenue and Vernon Avenue, as well as the corner of Park and Village Court. We may be moving those around depending upon what's going on, but to try to make sure that those who are driving through the downtown, looping through the downtown, waiting for a parking space to open up in the Village Court parking lot or on Park or Vernon Avenues, know that they can hop right across Green Bay Road, grab a parking space right away, take a short, quick walk to wherever they're going, and be there well before making the time it would take to make another loop of the downtown. So we do hope that folks start taking us up on that, and we will be looking at ways to perhaps further incentivize parking across Green Bay. I also have gotten questions about this, so I wanted to make sure, and if you can move the slide ahead, thank you. I've been getting questions about our left turn parking signage in the downtown. We installed new parking signage, new signage in the center lane of Park and Vernon Avenues, reminding all of our drivers that left turns into parking spaces is not allowed. This is a rule that's been in place in Glencoe for decades. These parking actions are unsafe, and we believe the locations of these new signs, as you see running down the center of the street, will help remind drivers not to cross the double yellow center line to grab a parking space. I will say, yesterday, actually these went back up. We lost the first round of them to a few errant drivers who ran them down. These are a little bit more robust, this second round of signage. But I did see somebody today as I was myself driving back to the Village Hall, pass a sign and immediately make a left turn into a space. We frequently get the complaint that the village isn't doing enough to enforce this rule. Public safety does write tickets for it. Public safety can't be out there all the time. This is a driver responsibility. There's a reason that the rule exists, and the rule is that our narrow drive lanes and the angle of our parking spaces makes it very difficult to make that turning movement in a single move. Many times it requires a 2 or 3 point turn to get safely into that parking space. So I'm asking, and I will be, perhaps out there with a bullhorn one of these days, asking people to take heed of the signs that are posted, to follow that direction, and to please, when you're frustrated by the fact that the parking spaces aren't where you want them, go across Green Bay Road where we've got those parking spaces waiting for you. So I just want to mention, we recognize that especially in recent months, many downtown patrons have been frustrated by parking limitations. As I share with people when they reach out to me about this actually is a really good problem for us to work through, because it means the downtown continues to be vibrant and it attracts shoppers and diners from the entire region. That's really important. Tonight at the Committee of the Whole, staff outlined some recommendations to commence a new study to look at ways we can help mitigate some of these parking issues, some of our streetscape issues, and evaluate some different paths that we may want to take going forward. The last time we did a parking study was back in October of 2014. That's the date of the data. Obviously, a lot has changed in the last decade, and we want to make sure that any recommendations and policies, and even if there are pilot programs that we may consider, align with best practices and meet the needs of our unique business district. The village is seeking to be thoughtfully responsive on these issues. We're not ignoring the complaints that we're getting. We hear you. It isn't as simple as snapping our fingers and suddenly parking appears, except it is because there are 32 parking spaces available just to the east of Green Bay Road that are suddenly available for use by the downtown, by our downtown business patrons. When we commence the study, and we're going to get to work on bringing a recommendation to the village board as soon as possible, we plan to engage the Chamber of Commerce, our business owners and operators, and our residents to make sure that their feedback and ideas are shared, considered, and integrated into the plan. So it's an ongoing process. Again, I reiterate, I would much rather be having conversations about how we deal with a lack of parking than having conversations about how to fill vacant storefronts. We have a great downtown. People enjoy it here. It's wonderful to see it vibrant and full, and we are all committed to finding the right path forward. Okay, so just a quick update on our strategic plan as well, and I want to say thank you to the village board and to our executive staff team for a really productive strategic planning retreat, which we held on Monday, June 3rd. It was a great day of discussing the village's short-term and medium-term goals and the ways that we can build out objectives and action plans to achieve them. The next steps in the process entail staff working with our consultant to finalize language on mission, vision, and values, as well as working to develop an implementation plan. We will be getting updates back to the village board in the next couple of months with the goal of having a new strategic plan tied with our new budget that will kick off in January of 2025. Okay, so I've been talking too much, and I'm going to kick it to another staff member to give our last round of exciting updates about some upcoming events, and Sammy Hansel, our communications manager, is here to tell you all about it.
Hello, everyone. Lots of fun summer events coming up in the next week or so. Starting tomorrow night is the first Glencoe Al Fresco event, which is a new summer series that we're kicking off with Writers Theater in the Glencoe Park District. So tomorrow night from 5 to 7 in the Women's Library Club Park, we'll have honey butter fried chicken. They'll be selling their food there. Happy hour specials at Writers Theater and live music. We hope to continue to snowball this event into a cherished event for the community. Next Friday is the annual Glencoe Sidewalk Sale, coordinated by the Winnetka Northfield Glencoe Chamber of Commerce, as well as the annual North Shore tent sale that is on Hazel Avenue. So that's Friday and Saturday from 9 to 5. And then all the fun July 4th celebrations are sneaking up on us. The annual fireworks at Lakefront Park, coordinated with the Glencoe Park District. And then all of the other events on the 4th, including the annual fun run, early childhood games in Caulk Park. And they've added a 4th of July bags tournament as well, which will happen in Caulk Park after the early childhood games and before the parade. The annual parade will kick off at 1 o'clock. And we have a new MC for the parade this year, who is a Glencoe native. His name is DJ Pizza Head. So he will also be playing music in the downtown starting at 11:30 and coordinating some fun little activities and games for anyone that's hanging around and trying to stake their spot for the parade. So lots of stuff to look forward to.
Thank you, Sammy. And that concludes the village manager's report, unless there are any questions that anyone may have.
All right, the next item is the village president's report. That's me. And the first item on that is consideration of a proclamation celebrating June 19th, which was yesterday, as Juneteenth in the village of Glencoe. The proclamation was circulated to the board members. It was published online. And it was yesterday. Unless there are comments, is there a motion to approve the proclamation?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. The motion carries. Before I get to the next item, which is a resolution concerning a former village manager who was Glencoe's village manager for almost ever, including when I grew up here, I want to talk about our current village manager, who just became president of the Illinois City County Management Association, the ILCMA. Glencoe is a small village. We are lucky to have a very excellent staff. That starts with our village manager. It is an honor for him to be president of this organization, which is an organization for all village, city, and county governments in the state of Illinois. And it's not only an honor for him, we benefit from it because it helps him network with people in his business all over the state. He's able to hire some of those folks, which is why we have such a good staff, and he's able to network with the ones that are working for other governments, which is why we get along with them and get a lot of stuff. So before we honor, as we should, our former village managers, I just want to say, I think we're lucky to have our current village manager, and I think you can see it by the recognition of this organization. Okay, on the agenda is consideration of a resolution dedicating and naming the Robert B. Morris Conference Room. As was previously noted and as we circulated, Glencoe's former and longest-serving village manager, Bob Morris, passed away last fall at the age of 101. He was the Glencoe village manager from 1949 to 1982. And long after that, he continued to be a member of Rotary and the Glencoe Union Church. His list of accomplishments is very long, but they're important. and they're lasting. I'll mention one, which is Glencoe has a public safety department. Bob Morris invented that. So, and we're pretty happy we have that. There are some reasons why not everyone loves those, so we're grandfathered in. There's, I think, only one other community in the state grandfathered in, but we wouldn't change that for anything. Bob Morris did that. Tonight's action, a resolution naming our large conference room on the first floor, formerly the finance conference room, after Bob, is a statement of what a very important part of our community Bob was and will remain. And there will be a formal dedication ceremony on the 4th of July at 11 a.m. The resolution has been circulated, it's been published. Unless there are any comments, is there a motion to approve?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. I think we need a roll call for this.
Trustee Hallwax.
Yes.
Trustee Listner.
Yes.
Trustee Mealopoulos. Trustee Underdunk. Trustee Rubin.
Yes.
Trustee Scott.
Yes.
The motion carries, and so the finance conference room will be renamed, and everybody's welcome on the 4th of July. The next item on the agenda is the consent agenda. The consent agenda includes items that have been published online for the community and reviewed by board members individually or together as part of our committee of the whole discussions. We don't think they warrant any further public discussion. Said it's been published, circulated. Unless there are any comments, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Let's have a roll call vote, please.
Trustee Hallwax.
Yes.
Trustee Listner.
Yes.
Trustee Mealopoulos. Trustee Underdunk. Trustee Rubin.
Yes.
Trustee Scott.
Yes.
The consent agenda is approved. We're then on to regular business tonight. The first two items concern our licensing agreement with Guild Hall, a restaurant we're glad to have on Vernon Avenue in the Uptown Business District. The two items are consideration of a resolution authorizing the Fourth Amendment to the licensing agreement with Guild Hall for use of public right-of-way for outdoor dining, and the next item is consideration of a resolution amending the comprehensive fee and fine schedule for outdoor dining structures and carry-out parking spaces. I'll ask our village manager to present these two items together. I note that the general manager of Guild Hall, Jerry Muldoon, is here for us to, so he can weigh in if he wants to. So, village manager Crowley.
Thank you, Mr. President. You took some of my statements, so I'll truncate mine a bit more, which is totally fine. Brevity is the source of all brownie points, as you like to remind me. There are two agenda items. They are interrelated. As President Rowan mentioned, the first really does focus on an extension to the licensing agreement, which has been in place since 2020. As a function of an outgrowth of an effort that the village undertook to shore up some of our businesses during the COVID pandemic. The second relates to the fee structure that ties to that licensing agreement, but also that ties to the use of curbside pickup spaces by a number of our restaurants and those that utilize those spaces for kind of those quick pickup customers that they have. So we've been working closely with Guild Hall on this effort over the past several months, and we remain grateful to the restaurant's leadership for their efforts in working with us. As noted, all the parties have agreed that this will be the final extension of the agreement, which runs through September 30th, 2025. That's a bit of a change from the current structure. Our current licensing agreements have run on a 12-month renewal cycle. This one will now be 14 months, but will extend to the kind of ultimate date of September 30th, at which time, September 30th, 2025, at which time Guild Hall will remove the structure and restore the roadway as necessary. We're committed to working together to consider ways to accommodate outdoor dining differently after that date. I noted the fee structure that applies to the use of the right-of-way for this use will be amended, increasing 5% from the current rate, which has been in place since late 2022. That same 5% increase will also apply to curbside pickup spaces. Just as a reminder, the way our curbside pickup spaces work, any restaurant is entitled to request one at no charge. And so there are a few restaurants in the downtown that have one. Actually, I think there's only one restaurant that has one, that's Meg's. Those that have more than one are required to pay a fee, and that fee structure is broken down by time of day. So if, for instance, Hometown Coffee, which has 3 parking spaces in use for carry-out, they have those for the breakfast and lunch time frames, which is 7 a.m. to 4 p.m. There are different fee structures for the lunch hour. Obviously, that period of time, that 10 a.m. to 4 p.m., is our highest use of parking in the downtown. So that fee structure is 2 times the fee structure at the breakfast and dinner hours. So this 5% increase will apply to those. Those rates have not changed since back in 2022 as well, when this fee structure was first put in place. We do get questions from time to time about why the village might accommodate either of these uses, and that doing so does impact other businesses unfairly. Certainly that is a concern that we share, which is why we're looking at ways to adjust parking restrictions elsewhere. I've talked about that quite a bit this evening. But also to study ways to appropriately make changes in the future, something else I also reported on. Just a couple of notes that I think are useful and helpful for people who may wonder. Guildhall shared with us that they served 100,000 meals last year. Hometown Coffee indicated they had 90,000 to-go orders during 2023. Those numbers highlight that there are needs that are unique to some businesses. And that said, we want to make sure that we don't overly negatively impact others in the process. So as we've spoken about quite a bit this evening, the intention in extending this is to continue to work toward what the future looks like, but also to consider how our policies can evolve and change in the future. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions the board may have on these 2 items at this time.
And let me say, so briefly, during the pandemic, we were all worried, and our businesses were worried about what was going to happen because everything shut down. And Guildhall came to the village, and they had the idea of having what I'll call the igloos, which was the first response to the pandemic, and we agreed with that, and they did that. And then after doing that, Guildhall had an idea, as the pandemic still existed, which is putting up what they refer to as the streetery. And at the time, we, as part of our sort of pandemic program, we agreed to that. And these were each year, it was a 1-year lease type arrangement, license arrangement. At the end of this year, so we're talking, I guess, April, May, the lease that we had expired, and we were sort of thinking the streetery was going to go. But Guildhall came to us and said, look, they made a big investment, they would like to earn it back, and we were interested in doing that, recognizing that the streetery is a little controversial. There are some people that love it, and there are some that don't. We had a event in front of the library, Meet the Board Members, and I went out there to meet our residents, and I got beat up by a few of our residents who said, what is that thing doing sitting in the middle of our uptown business district? We consider that. We consider the interests of the business, which has been a great asset to the village, and so we've agreed to extend for 1 final year the streetery with and a little more than a year, so they can get the whole 2025 season. And then I think we have an understanding that Guildhall's not going to come back to us and say, we were kidding, we want to do it for another year. I think so. The streetery is going to be gone after this coming year. In terms of the rates, we never knew what the right charge is for someone that's putting up essentially a building on our parking spaces. And we still don't know what the right charge is. There was a disagreement. Some people said that the price for a building should be the same as the price for a parking spot. I don't necessarily agree with that, but it isn't worth fighting about at this juncture, and from my point of view, that question will be moot at the end of the 2025 period because there won't be a building. And so then we can think about what's the right thing to do for parking spots. So we're glad Guildhall is here. We're glad we were able to accommodate them. We recognize that this has been an asset not just for the restaurant, but for residents who like, some of them like using that outdoor streetery. It is not an asset for other residents who, like I said, periodically beat us up asking about what it's doing there. But again, so one more year, and then we'll move on to other streetscape issues. If there aren't any other questions, is there a motion to approve these two resolutions?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, let's have a roll call.
Trustee Hallwax.
Yes.
Trustee Listener.
Yes.
Trustee Mealopoulos. Trustee Underdunk.
Yes.
Trustee Rubin.
Yes.
Trustee Scott.
Yes.
All right, the two resolutions are approved, and we'll have the streetery for another year plus. And thank you, Mr. Muldoon. Okay, the next item on the agenda is consideration of an ordinance amending Section 4-102 permitted uses of the Glencoe zoning code. This was the subject of a zoning board meeting a little more than a month ago. And the zoning board made a recommendation, and we wanted to be sure that our businesses had ample opportunity to weigh in case they thought this was a problem. So we delayed by a month consideration by the board, and I'll ask our Development Services Director, Taylor Baxter, to present.
Thank you, President Rowan, members of the board. This is step 3 of this 3-part process. You might remember back in, I believe it was April, we first discussed this at our initial village board meeting, and you referred it to the Zoning Commission for a public hearing and a recommendation. That public hearing was held in early May, and they made a recommendation, which we'll discuss in more detail momentarily. And now we're back for the final step in this process, which is the final decision to whether or not to adopt this ordinance by the village board. I'm not going to go too far into the background because we've discussed it in quite a bit of detail already. Happy to answer any questions about it at any time. Just a reminder, our current use regulations really fall into 4 categories per the zoning code. First, prohibited uses, anything that's not listed, and a small number of expressly prohibited uses. Special uses are uses that require a special use permit, regardless of what floor they're on. Permitted uses, but not on the ground floor. These are allowed by right on upper floors, but you need a special use permit to be on the ground floor. And finally, permitted uses allowed on any floor. Restaurant and retail uses are all number 4 here, permitted currently. And office and service commercial uses are a mix between numbers 3 and 4 on this list. A little bit more detail on the SUP process, because this is really tied to what the Zoning Commission's recommendation is. The special use permit process, it requires a public hearing with the Zoning Commission. Unlike the amendment process, you skip that first meeting, the first trip to this body, you go straight to the Zoning Commission for a public hearing. It's about 4 to 5 weeks between the application deadline and the public hearing. The fee is $250. Public notice is required. So it'll be posted in the paper of record. We also typically, if it's location-based, we'll send out letters. It's not required by code, but we will send out as a courtesy letters to anyone nearby, so they have an opportunity to comment. The zoning commission has a public hearing, makes a recommendation. They can include conditions, and then it goes back to the village board for final decision. At the absolute shortest, this is a 6-week process. Much more typically, it's 2 to 3 months, and occasionally it's a longer process. I'm thinking of the example down at Hubbard Woods which is now over a year ago, when they had a special use permit for a height increase, and there was a lot of public comment. They went through several zoning commission meetings, and that process took almost a half a year to complete. So it can vary, but it's typically a months-long process to go through this. I also want to touch, this wasn't in the packet, but based on some questions I got this afternoon, I want to touch briefly on what's considered in the special use permits, why you might approve or deny a special use permit. There are standards in the zoning code that the zoning commission and the village board is tasked with following for reviewing special use permits. A lot of them deal with impacts on neighbors, adverse impact, interference with surrounding development. Some of the more interesting ones for what we're talking about here today are whether or not the special use permit's in compliance with the purposes of the code, including with the comprehensive plan. So would this use, if you're reviewing a particular use on the ground floor, would that use in that location be in compliance with the recommendations of the comprehensive plan? And quickly, 2 other ones, whether and to what extent the proposed use and development would have a public benefit in that particular location, and whether and to what extent that benefit could be achieved in an alternate location. So if somebody came to you with an SUP for a particular use, those are just some of the examples of criteria that the zoning commission and the village board will be considering. Again, happy to answer any questions at any point for any of this. So the zoning commission, they held their public hearing. The first thing they talked about was the B2 district, which is Hubbard Woods. They came to a unanimous conclusion that no changes were recommended to the use regulations in the Hubbard Woods district. It's fundamentally a different place in the opinion of the zoning commission. There is more vacancy in Hubbard Woods, and there's also no second floor. So it makes it more difficult for what they recommended for the for downtown to apply to the Hubbard Woods district. So the ordinance that you have, which is based on the zoning commission recommendation, has no changes to any uses in the B2 Hubbard Woods district. All the changes are only in the downtown B1 district. Excuse me, this is a bit out of order here, but public notice. Letters were sent to all property owners as listed on tax records prior to the public hearing. We also sent them to every physical address of a commercial property in the village. We sent another round of letters to the same people after the zoning commission recommendation, letting them know about this meeting. We had a very limited response. We did not really hear from any property owners or business owners about this. We received no direct opposition. There were 3 speakers at the public hearing. 2 were residents that were generally supportive of the change. We did have a religious leader who spoke, requesting an easier path for religious congregations to occupy space on the ground floor downtown. Currently, that requires an SUP. So that was a bit different from what they were mostly considering, which was moving uses that didn't require an SUP to an SUP. He was requesting kind of the opposite for his particular use. We did have a representative from the Chamber of Commerce at the initial meeting who expressed support of increasing restrictions or requiring an SUP for non-retail, non-restaurant uses on the ground floor. I don't believe there's, although I didn't hear any phone comments either. I don't believe there's anyone here for this evening, but I'm not 100% sure about that. The Zoning Commission, during their hearing, after hearing from members of the public, they started their discussion, and they considered a few different options. These were also discussed with the village board a few months ago. The first option was really to target a small number of office and service commercial uses, specific ones that they felt needed more oversight, an SUP, and move them to that higher category of review where they need an SUP. This would have been the least significant change. They also discussed making the requirement of an SUP the default position for non-retail or restaurant uses on the ground floor, and then they could exempt certain uses from that requirement. Finally, they discussed making non-retail or non-restaurant uses conditional uses. This would be allowed with an administrative review under certain conditions, such as a size limit or a separation requirement. They talked about all these options. And where they really landed was on number 2. Most of their discussion was focused on the details of number 2 here, making the requirement of the SUP the default for non-retail and non-restaurant uses on the ground floor. And then they talked a lot about how they might want to exempt certain uses from that requirement. Some things they talked about were trying to categorize these uses by certain criteria, such as, does the use have significant walk-in business? Does it attract people to the downtown business district? Maybe that could be the type of use you don't want that extra layer of review over. Is it a sales tax generator? Do they have night and weekend hours? There's a lot of mentions in the comprehensive plan, the plan for downtown, about a vibrant downtown. If you have a type of business that has a lot of night and weekend users, it could add to that. And finally, in the plan for downtown, there's a call to support a diverse and sustainable mix of activities within downtown. There's some discretion about what that might mean. It might mean different things to different people. That is also something that they considered. And after discussion, they landed on exempting no uses from this. So they talked about how they might want to categorize these things, and they came to the agreement that they're going to use none of these. They recommended requiring an SUP for all office, service, commercial. It should actually say non-restaurant and non-retail uses, because if you notice in the list of uses that they recommend moving to requiring an SUP, it also includes things like parking lots, libraries, which you might not consider office or service commercial. But really any non-restaurant, non-retail uses. We're recommending that extra level of review. In total, 34 uses that are currently permitted on the ground floor, recommended by the Zoning Commission, now requiring an SUP. So next steps, you have an ordinance in your packet. The ordinance follows the Zoning Commission's recommendation. You can make a motion to approve it, or you can also approve it with changes as determined to be appropriate. And with that, I will turn it over for any questions.
So, let me, before we, get the board, let me just say, I went to the zoning board, zoning commission meeting. Good discussion, thoughtful. I think the punchline here is the village is looking for more control, doesn't want to ban anything, and I think where the zoning board came out and where I come out is that requiring a special use permit is not going to prevent anything, and is not going to be a huge ordeal. I mean, special use permits are a huge ordeal when it's writer's theater and it's a new building and it's a new idea and there's all this change. It's pretty straightforward when it's a landlord has the possibility of 2 tenants and the village gets a chance to weigh in. That doesn't take a lot of time, and I think the response from our business district and landlords was they're not worried about it. But at the same time, what it enables us to do, we've seen in the Uptown Business District, and I don't want to name anything, but we've seen some first floor uses where we think, gee, that's too bad, because we really wish it was a restaurant or a store, and now we'll have a chance to weigh in. And if the economy is in a certain place, and the best anybody can do is a use that we don't love, but it's the only alternative, then it's going to get approved, because we don't want open storefronts. But if there are better options, we get to weigh in. So I came away thinking, this is what we want. We'll have to, we don't know yet exactly the mix that we want, and that's going to change. But every time somebody comes with one of the non-retail, non-restaurant uses, the village will have a chance to look at it and decide, and I think that will benefit us. So I'm with the current program. I'm with the zoning commission. I think they got it right. Trustee Andrew.
I had an administrative question.
Text amendment only. No, that's right. No change to the zoning map whatsoever.
Any other trustees?
Not a trustee.
Law.
It is a law question, one that I know Taylor knows the answer to, but I'm not going to put him on the spot. I'll answer it myself. But a question that frequently arises when municipality makes changes to existing uses is what happens with respect to those uses that are lawfully existing today, but tomorrow, because of the change, if you decide to adopt this ordinance, would have otherwise required a special use permit. And the answer is those uses will be allowed to continue to exist under our code. They will be governed by our legal non-conforming use section of the zoning code. And so there's not going to be, they're not going to have to be shut down or declared illegal. They will be able to continue. There are certain regulations that do apply to legal non-conforming uses.
Okay.
There are technical requirements in our code, in our non-conforming use code. Typically, they deal with expansion of those uses. It's possible that a mere technical change of title or ownership may not trigger a need for a special use permit, but if there's a substantial change in the nature of the use, it may.
There's also a 1 year period. If you discontinue a use, a legally non-conforming use, for a period of 1 year, you lose it. So you could have a gap where you're renovating and you're not open, things like that. Your business could change hands, and that would be fine. But an expansion would not be allowed typically. A relocation could also trigger the requirement for an SUP. That's right. Yes.
And the board has a lot of discretion with special use permits. Any other questions? If not, thank you, Taylor, for the presentation. The reason there aren't a lot of questions is because the board's actually been talking about this for a while. This started with a very helpful presentation from a young man who was at New Trier and did a study of what other villages were doing to get more control over their business districts. And what he's done is he's gotten us to look at what we were doing and to change our zoning code to give us more control.
That presentation, by the way, was 1 year ago today. It was at the June board meeting last year.
If I could, there was one other request by the zoning commission outside of their recommendation, and it was that the board consider looking at this again when the comprehensive plan is complete and adopted, in case there's any changes that need to be adjusted at that point.
That makes sense, and one thing about special use permit is whatever the comprehensive plan says, special use permit allows us to deal with it one at a time if we want to. Okay, is there a motion to approve the ordinance amendments to our zoning code? Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, let's have a roll call.
Trustee Hallwax?
Yes.
Trustee Listener? Trustee Mealopoulos? Trustee Underdunk? Trustee Rubin?
Yes.
Trustee Scott?
Yes.
The motion passes. The amendments are approved. Thank you, Taylor. Okay, that concludes the regular business. Unless there's anything else, is there and we've already done our closed session, so is there a motion to adjourn?